The fluorescent lights of the clinic cast their familiar sterile glow as another day wound down in the quiet suburbs of Santa Rosa. Dr. Rebecca Chen had been practicing family medicine for nearly 15 years, and she thought she'd seen everything. Her small independent practice, tucked away in a strip mall between a pharmacy and a dry cleaner, had become a cornerstone of the community since opening 5 years ago. Dr. Chen, Mrs. Patterson forgot her reading glasses again, called Maria, her medical assistant, waving a familiar pair of wire-rimmed spectacles. "I'll give her a call," Rebecca replied, sliding the glasses into her desk drawer. She glanced at the wall clock, nearly 7 p.m. Just one more appointment to go. The waiting room had emptied except for 2 figures huddled in the corner, a heavy-set man in a navy work shirt and a teenage girl wearing an oversized gray sweatshirt. Rebecca recognized them immediately, the Hendersons from down the street. She lived just 4 blocks away in the same neighborhood. "Tom Henderson," she called out warmly, approaching the pair. "I didn't expect to see you folks tonight." Tom stood up, offering a firm handshake. "Dr. Chen, thanks for squeezing us in." "Rebecca, call me Rebecca when we're not in the office," she smiled, then turned her attention to the girl who kept her gaze firmly planted on the linoleum floor. "And you must be Sarah. I've seen you around the neighborhood but we've never been properly introduced." Sarah managed only the slightest nod, her fingers nervously picking at the frayed edges of her sweatshirt sleeves. "We'll have you folks back in just a minute," Rebecca assured them. "I'm just wrapping up some notes from my last patient." Back in her office, Rebecca settled into her chair to review the evening's files. Maria knocked and entered, beginning her end-of-day sanitization routine. "Doctor," Maria said quietly, wiping down the examination table, "something seems off about that father-daughter pair out there." Rebecca looked up from her computer screen. "How so?" Maria's expression grew troubled as she cleaned the medical instruments. "When I took the girl's vital signs, the father answered every single question I asked her. Even simple things like her birth date and if she had any allergies. She just sat there like a statue." She paused in her cleaning. "And those vital signs?" "Her blood pressure was through the roof for a teenager. Heart rate elevated. She looked terrified to be here." Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "I know the family, Maria. Tom can be pretty controlling, some parents are just like that. Maybe Sarah's anxious about being at a doctor's office." "I'm not so sure," Maria continued, her voice dropping even lower. "I've been doing this for 8 years, Dr. Chen. This felt different. Wrong, somehow." Maria handed Rebecca the patient chart, and Rebecca's eyebrows shot up as she scanned the information. 16 years old, presenting with possible pregnancy symptoms, she read aloud. Maria nodded solemnly. "That's what has me worried." "Send them in," Rebecca said, straightening her white coat and taking a deep breath. The door opened and Tom guided Sarah into the room with a protective hand on her back. Sarah moved carefully, as if every step required tremendous effort. Her baggy sweatshirt concealed her figure completely. "Thank you for staying late to see us, Dr. Chen," Tom said, settling into the chair beside the examination table. "This isn't easy to discuss." "Of course," Rebecca replied. "What brings you in tonight?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. "Well, it's delicate. We think Sarah might be expecting." Despite having read the chart, hearing it stated so directly made Rebecca's chest tighten. She studied Sarah, who remained motionless, staring at her hands. "Sarah," Rebecca said gently, "can you tell me what symptoms you've been experiencing?" Before Sarah could respond, Tom jumped in. "She's been getting sick in the mornings, sleeping all the time, and complaining about her stomach hurting." Rebecca kept her focus on Sarah. "I'd like to hear from you directly, Sarah. Can you describe how you've been feeling?" Sarah opened her mouth slightly, but Tom continued. "She's also missed her monthly cycle twice now. That's when we started suspecting." "Mr. Henderson," Rebecca said firmly but kindly, "I need Sarah to answer these questions herself. It's important for her medical care." Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been feeling sick. And tired. Really tired." "That must be frightening for someone your age," Rebecca said. "Can you tell me how you think this might have happened?" Tom's jaw tightened. "She has a boyfriend at school. We've talked to her about being responsible, but teenagers don't always listen." Rebecca noticed Sarah flinch slightly at the mention of a boyfriend. "Sarah, is that accurate?" Sarah's response was almost inaudible. "I guess." "Dr. Chen," Tom leaned forward, "we need this to stay completely confidential. Our family values privacy, and we don't want this getting around the neighborhood." "Patient confidentiality is standard practice, Mr. Henderson," Rebecca assured him, though she found his emphasis unusual. "Nothing we discuss leaves this room." "Good," Tom nodded vigorously. "That's what we needed to hear." Rebecca turned back to Sarah. "I'd like to perform an ultrasound to see how far along you might be. Would that be all right with you?" Sarah gave a small nod. "Maria will help you get positioned on the examination table," Rebecca said, preparing the ultrasound equipment. "You'll need to lift your shirt just above your belly." As Maria helped Sarah onto the table, Rebecca noticed the girl wince with pain. "Does your abdomen hurt?" Maria asked softly. Sarah nodded, and Tom quickly added, "The pain has been getting worse over the past few days." Rebecca applied the ultrasound gel, noting how Sarah tensed at her touch. She positioned the transducer and began scanning, her eyes fixed on the monitor. What she saw made her pause and look again. "Sarah," she said carefully, "you appear to be about 32 weeks pregnant." Tom's face went pale. "That's impossible. It hasn't been that long." Rebecca studied the images more closely. "Have you received any prenatal care before today?" "No," Tom said quickly. "This is our first visit to any doctor." Rebecca continued her examination, her concern growing with each image on the screen. "I can see that you're having a girl," she said to Sarah, then frowned. "But I'm noticing some troubling signs. The baby appears to be smaller than expected for 32 weeks, which could indicate growth problems." She adjusted the equipment for a better view. "I'm also detecting some irregularities in the fetal heartbeat." "What does that mean?" Tom asked, his voice tight. "It means Sarah needs immediate specialized care," Rebecca explained. "These conditions, the growth restriction and heart irregularities, require monitoring and treatment that I can't provide in this clinic. She needs to go to the hospital tonight." Tom's expression darkened. "Hospital? Why can't you just give her some vitamins or something?" "This is beyond vitamins, Mr. Henderson," Rebecca said firmly. "The baby could be in distress. Sarah needs advanced monitoring, possibly medication, and specialists who handle high-risk pregnancies." She printed several ultrasound images and handed them to Tom. "I can prescribe prenatal vitamins and iron supplements, but that's not enough. The emergency room at St. Mary's has an excellent maternal-fetal medicine unit." Tom stared at the prescription Rebecca handed him. "The pharmacy next door is still open," she continued. "You can fill this while Maria helps Sarah clean up." Tom looked between Rebecca and his daughter uncertainly. "She'll be fine here for a few minutes," Rebecca assured him. "We just need to wipe off the gel and give her the ultrasound pictures." Reluctantly, Tom took the prescription and left the room. The moment the door closed, Sarah's demeanor changed completely. Tears sprang to her eyes as Maria gently cleaned the ultrasound gel from her belly. "Honey, are you okay?" Maria asked softly. Sarah's voice cracked as she whispered, "She moves every time she hears his voice. I hate that she responds to him." Rebecca and Maria exchanged alarmed glances. The statement hung in the air, loaded with implications neither wanted to consider. "Sarah," Rebecca said carefully, sitting down beside the examination table, "what do you mean by that?" But Sarah had already withdrawn back into silence, her brief moment of openness vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Rebecca tried again. "Sarah, if there's something you want to tell me." The door opened and Tom returned, cutting off the conversation. Sarah immediately tensed, her face resuming its blank expression. "Got the vitamins," Tom announced, holding up a pharmacy bag. "Now, about this hospital business." "It's not negotiable, Mr. Henderson," Rebecca said firmly. "Sarah's condition requires immediate attention." Tom's expression grew stubborn. "She seems fine to me. Can't this wait until tomorrow?" "Fetal distress doesn't wait," Rebecca replied. "Every hour matters when we're dealing with growth restriction and cardiac irregularities." She handed Sarah the ultrasound photos, watching as the girl stared at the black and white images with a mixture of fascination and something else, fear, perhaps, or sadness. Tom guided Sarah toward the door. "We'll think about it," he said dismissively. "Mr. Henderson," Rebecca called after them, "this isn't a suggestion. It's a medical emergency." But they were already gone, leaving Rebecca standing in her office with a growing sense of dread. After they left, Maria returned to gather the remaining ultrasound printouts, her face creased with worry. "It's almost 8 o'clock, she announced, glancing at her watch. "That was our last appointment, right?" Rebecca nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. "Maria, what did you think about what Sarah said when her father left the room?" Maria stopped organizing the papers. "About the baby responding to his voice? That was strange." "More than strange," Rebecca said, running a hand through her hair. "Something's not right about that whole situation." "What do you think she meant?" Maria asked. "I don't know, but coupled with everything else, the way he controlled the conversation, her fear, the fact that she's 32 weeks pregnant and has never seen a doctor." Rebecca trailed off. Maria nodded slowly. "And hiding a pregnancy for that long? How does a 16-year-old hide being 7 months pregnant?" They finished closing the clinic, turning off equipment and locking medication cabinets. The other staff had left hours earlier, leaving just the two of them to secure the building. Outside in the parking lot, Maria headed toward her car. "See you tomorrow, Dr. Chen. I hope they listen to you about the hospital." "Me too," Rebecca replied, though she had a sinking feeling they wouldn't. Rebecca drove the short distance to her neighborhood, her mind replaying every detail of the appointment. As she turned onto her street, she slowed when she spotted Tom's pickup truck in the Henderson driveway. "They didn't go to the hospital," she muttered to herself, worry gnawing at her stomach. She pulled into her own driveway and sat in her car for a moment, debating her next move. Technically, she had fulfilled her professional obligation. She had diagnosed the problem and recommended appropriate treatment. If patients chose not to follow medical advice, that was their decision. But Sarah's whispered words echoed in her mind, "She moves every time she hears his voice. I hate that she responds to him." Rebecca had been practicing medicine long enough to recognize when something felt wrong, and everything about tonight felt wrong. After a restless 20 minutes in her house, Rebecca made a decision. She walked back outside and down the street to the Henderson house. Lights were on throughout the first floor, and she could see figures moving around inside. She knocked firmly on the front door, mentally rehearsing what she would say. Tom answered, surprise flashing across his features. "Dr. Chen. What are you doing here?" "I wanted to check on Sarah," Rebecca said. "I noticed you didn't go to the hospital, and I'm concerned about her condition." Tom's posture shifted slightly. "Oh, that. Yeah, we decided to take her first thing in the morning instead. Sarah was exhausted, and you know how emergency rooms are, long waits, chaos. We figured a good night's sleep would be better for her." Rebecca blinked, processing this new information. "I see. That's probably wise." "Exactly," Tom nodded. "Sarah's already asleep, but her mother's sitting with her now. Everything's under control." Rebecca felt a flutter of confusion. This was the first mention of Sarah's mother being involved. Throughout the entire clinic visit, Tom had never mentioned a wife or partner. "That's good to hear," Rebecca said carefully. "Well, I hope the hospital visit goes well tomorrow. Thanks for checking on us, Dr. Chen. It means a lot to know our neighbors care." Tom closed the door, leaving Rebecca standing on the porch with an uneasy feeling in her stomach. Something about his explanation didn't sit right, but she couldn't put her finger on what. Back in her house, Rebecca tried to settle into her evening routine. She heated up leftover Chinese takeout and attempted to watch television, but her concentration kept drifting back to Sarah. Unable to shake her concerns, Rebecca found herself opening her laptop and navigating to Facebook. She felt slightly guilty about looking up patients on social media, but her worry overrode her professional reservations. She searched for Tom Henderson and quickly located his profile. His privacy settings were fairly open, allowing her to browse through his photos and information. What she found puzzled her further. Tom's relationship status was listed as single, and scrolling through his photos, she saw plenty of pictures of him alone or with work colleagues, but very few that included Sarah. And none that included a woman who might be Sarah's mother. Rebecca expanded her search, looking through Tom's friend list for someone who might be Sarah's mother. She found a profile for Jennifer Martinez that caught her attention. The profile photo showed a woman who shared some facial features with Sarah, and Rebecca was almost certain she had seen this woman around the neighborhood years ago. She clicked on Jennifer's profile, and what she found made her pulse quicken. Jennifer's page had no recent photos with Tom or Sarah. In fact, scrolling through her timeline, Rebecca couldn't find any family photos dating back several years. More troubling still, Jennifer's most recent posts were from a different city entirely, Phoenix, Arizona. Rebecca stared at the screen, her mind racing. If Jennifer lived in Arizona, then who was the woman Tom claimed was sitting with Sarah tonight? She grabbed her phone and, after a moment's hesitation, sent Jennifer a private message through Facebook. "Hi Jennifer, I'm Dr. Rebecca Chen, a family physician here in Santa Rosa. I saw your daughter Sarah tonight at my clinic and wanted to check on how her hospital visit is going. Hope everything is okay." She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then sat back to wait for a response. It came faster than she expected. Her phone buzzed with a Facebook call from Jennifer. Rebecca answered hesitantly. "Hello. Dr. Chen." Jennifer's voice was tight with concern. "What do you mean about a hospital visit? What's wrong with Sarah?" Rebecca's heart sank. "Ms. Martinez, I examined Sarah tonight. She's pregnant, about 32 weeks along. There are some complications that require immediate medical attention." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Pregnant? That's impossible. Sarah is only 16, and I haven't seen her in over 2 years. 2 years? Rebecca's voice rose slightly. "Tom and I divorced when Sarah was 12, Jennifer explained, her voice breaking. The custody battle was ugly. He got full custody and moved away with Sarah. I've been fighting to see my daughter ever since, but he keeps filing restraining orders, claiming I'm unstable." Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. "Ms. Martinez, where are you right now?" "I'm in Phoenix. I moved here for work after the divorce." "Dr. Chen, what's happening? Is Sarah okay?" Rebecca's mind reeled. "I need to call you back," she said quickly. "But first, do you know anything about Sarah having a boyfriend?" Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Sarah doesn't go to school anymore. Tom pulled her out years ago, claiming he was homeschooling her. She doesn't have friends, doesn't go anywhere. The few times I've managed to see her, she seemed terrified of everything." Rebecca ended the call with shaking hands. Tom's story was falling apart completely. No mother sitting with Sarah. No boyfriend from school. And most disturbing of all, a 16-year-old girl who had been isolated from the outside world, now carrying a baby. Sarah's whispered words took on a horrifying new meaning. "She moves every time she hears his voice. I hate that she responds to him." Rebecca reached for her phone and dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "I need to report suspected child abuse," Rebecca said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "A 16-year-old girl who is 32 weeks pregnant. I believe her father is the abuser, and both she and her unborn child are in immediate danger. The dispatcher took down the basic information and promised to send units immediately. Rebecca provided the Henderson address and explained the medical urgency of the situation. Officers are en route, the dispatcher assured her. Can you meet them at the scene? I'll be there, Rebecca promised. She threw on a jacket and hurried back outside. The Henderson house looked peaceful in the evening light, porch light glowing, windows warmly lit from within. It was impossible to imagine the horror that might be occurring behind those walls. 3 police cruisers arrived within minutes, their red and blue lights painting the quiet suburban street in alternating colors. Rebecca approached the lead officer. Dr. Rebecca Chen, she introduced herself. I made the call. Officer Martinez nodded. What can you tell us about the situation? Rebecca quickly explained the evening's events, the clinic visit, Tom's inconsistent stories, her conversation with Jennifer, and most importantly, Sarah's cryptic comment about the baby responding to her father's voice. Officer Martinez's expression grew grim as she listened. We'll need to speak with the girl to assess the situation. The officers approached the front door while Rebecca waited at the edge of the property as instructed. Officer Martinez knocked firmly, announcing their presence. The door opened, and Tom appeared, his face cycling through confusion, surprise, and then wariness as he took in the police presence. Officers? Is there a problem? Sir, we need to speak with you and your daughter about some concerns that have been raised. Tom's gaze flicked to Rebecca, standing near the street. His expression hardened. What kind of concerns? May we come in? Tom hesitated, glancing back into the house. Sarah's sleeping. She's not feeling well. We understand she's pregnant and may need medical attention, Officer Martinez said firmly. We need to check on her welfare. She's fine, Tom insisted. We're taking her to the hospital in the morning. Sir, we need to see her now. After a tense moment, Tom stepped back and allowed the officers inside. Rebecca remained outside, her heart pounding as she waited. Minutes passed. Then she heard raised voices from inside the house, followed by what sounded like running footsteps. Suddenly, the front door burst open and Tom emerged, pulling Sarah behind him. She was clearly struggling, her pregnant belly prominent beneath a thin nightgown. Let go of me. Sarah cried out, the first time Rebecca had heard her speak above a whisper. We're leaving, Tom shouted, dragging Sarah toward his truck. You can't prove anything. Officers poured out of the house in pursuit. Stop. Police. Tom reached his truck and shoved Sarah toward the passenger side, but she stumbled and fell to her knees on the driveway, crying out in pain. The baby, she gasped, her hands clutching her belly. In that moment, Tom's facade cracked completely. Instead of helping his pregnant daughter, he grabbed her arm and yanked her upward. Get up. We're leaving now. The brutality of the action, witnessed by 3 police officers, was all they needed. Officer Martinez and her partner immediately moved to restrain Tom while the 3rd officer knelt beside Sarah. Sarah, you're safe now, the officer said gently. An ambulance is on the way. Sarah looked up at her rescuer, tears streaming down her face. For the first time all evening, she made direct eye contact with someone. He said no one would believe me, she whispered. He said I was his, and the baby was his, and no one could change that. Rebecca felt physically sick as the full horror of the situation crystallized. She approached the officer kneeling with Sarah. I'm her doctor, she explained. She needs immediate medical attention, the pregnancy is high risk. The ambulance arrived as Tom was being loaded into a police car, his face contorted with rage. She's lying, he shouted. She's just a confused kid. That baby could be anyone's. But his protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence was mounting, and Sarah was finally free to tell her story. In the ambulance, with Rebecca beside her and paramedics monitoring her condition, Sarah began to speak. The words came slowly at first, then faster, as if years of silence were finally breaking. "It started when I was 13, she said, staring at the ambulance ceiling. "After Mom left. He said it was normal, that fathers and daughters who loved each other did this." Rebecca held Sarah's hand, offering what comfort she could. "He took me out of school so I wouldn't tell anyone. Said we were going to homeschool, but mostly I just stayed in the house. He'd lock me in the basement when anyone came over." The paramedic checked Sarah's vital signs while she continued talking. "When I got pregnant, he was so happy. He said now we'd really be a family forever. He started calling the baby ours and talking about how he'd teach her the same lessons he taught me." Rebecca squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, fighting back tears of her own. "I knew it was wrong," Sarah continued. "But I didn't know how to get help. Tonight, when you asked me questions and actually waited for me to answer, I thought maybe someone might finally listen." At the hospital, Sarah was immediately taken to the high-risk obstetric unit. Dr. Patricia Williams, the on-call maternal-fetal medicine specialist, took over her care. 32 weeks with severe intrauterine growth restriction, Dr. Williams explained to Rebecca. "We'll need to deliver within the next few days to give the baby the best chance." Rebecca found Jennifer in the hospital waiting room 3 hours later. She had driven through the night from Phoenix the moment she hung up with Rebecca. "Where is she?" Jennifer asked, jumping up from her chair. "Is she okay?" "She's stable," Rebecca assured her. "The doctors are taking excellent care of both Sarah and the baby." Jennifer broke down in tears. "I should have tried harder. I should have found a way to save her." "You couldn't have known," Rebecca said gently. "These predators are experts at manipulation and isolation." Detective Sarah Rodriguez arrived to interview Sarah the next morning. With her mother holding her hand and Rebecca present for medical support, Sarah told her complete story. The basement room Tom had created. The years of abuse disguised as homeschooling. The systematic isolation from the outside world. And the pregnancy that had filled her with both terror and a confusing sense of responsibility for the innocent life growing inside her. "He kept saying the baby was special because she was ours," Sarah explained to the detective. "But when I felt her moving, especially when she'd kick whenever she heard his voice, it made me sick. I didn't want her to know him at all." 3 days later, Sarah gave birth to a daughter, tiny but healthy, weighing just over 4 pounds. Despite everything she had endured, Sarah chose to keep her baby. She didn't ask for any of this, Sarah said, cradling her daughter in the hospital bed while Jennifer sat beside them. "But she deserves to be loved for who she is, not how she came to be." Rebecca visited them in the hospital room, bringing flowers and a stuffed animal for the baby. "What will you name her?" Rebecca asked, admiring the tiny infant. "Hope," Sarah said without hesitation. "Because that's what she represents now." Tom Henderson was sentenced to 35 years in prison on multiple charges including incest, child sexual abuse, and endangerment. The trial made headlines throughout California, sparking conversations about recognizing signs of abuse and the importance of believing children when they try to reach out for help. 6 months later, Rebecca received a card in the mail. The front showed a photo of Sarah and Hope, both healthy and smiling, with Jennifer standing behind them. Inside, Sarah had written, "Thank you for listening when I couldn't find the words, and for caring enough to see what was hidden. Hope is thriving, and we're building a real family now. You saved 2 lives that night." Rebecca kept the card on her desk at the clinic, a reminder that sometimes the most important diagnoses have nothing to do with medical symptoms. Sometimes they require recognizing the human suffering that hides beneath averted eyes, controlled conversations, and whispered confessions of fear. The case changed how Rebecca practiced medicine. She implemented new protocols at her clinic for recognizing potential abuse, trained her staff to watch for warning signs, and never again dismissed her instincts when something felt wrong. Because as she learned that night in Santa Rosa, the difference between life and tragedy sometimes comes down to one simple question: are you really listening to what your patient is trying to tell you? Maria still works with Rebecca, and they often reflect on that evening when everything could have gone so differently. They remember how Sarah's few whispered words, cryptic and confusing at the time, held the key to understanding a horror that had been hidden in plain sight. She moves every time she hears his voice. I hate that she responds to him. In the end, those weren't the words of a confused teenager. They were a desperate cry for help from a young woman who had found the courage to trust a stranger with her secret. And sometimes, Rebecca reflects, that's all it takes to save a life, someone willing to listen, really listen, to what isn't being said as much as what is.